In 1720, the streets of Paris erupted in panic as thousands realized their fortunes had vanished overnight. What once felt like endless wealth was suddenly exposed as an illusion built on belief alone. People demanded gold for their paper, but the vaults could not satisfy the fear spreading through the city. A financial dream had turned into a national nightmare within days. Behind this collapse stood one man whose ideas reshaped France and nearly destroyed it. His name was John Law, a gambler who changed history. He convinced an entire nation that paper could be more powerful than gold. And for a moment, it worked beyond anyone's imagination. But when belief disappeared, everything collapsed with it. This is the rise and fall of the first great financial illusion. To understand how it happened, we must go back to a man who mastered risk before he mastered money. His story begins not in France, but in Scotland. John Law was not born into power, but he was born with an extraordinary mind for numbers and risk. Gambling became his first laboratory for understanding human behavior. He studied probability not as theory, but as survival, learning how people made decisions under pressure. Every game revealed patterns others could not see. But his life changed forever after a single violent moment in London. A duel would transform him from gambler to fugitive. Law killed his opponent in the duel and was sentenced to death by the English courts. His brilliance could not save him from justice. But John Law refused to accept his fate, escaping prison in a daring act that shocked authorities. He fled across Europe, carrying only his mind and ambition. As a fugitive, he traveled through Europe, refining an idea that would one day change economies forever. He began to see money not as metal, but as belief. In a world dominated by gold and silver, Law proposed something radical and dangerous. He believed money's true power came from trust, not metal. Most rulers rejected his ideas, fearing instability and loss of control. But one nation, drowning in debt, was willing to listen. After the death of Louis XIV, France was nearly bankrupt and desperate for solutions. That desperation opened the door for Law's experiment. Enter Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, the man who would give Law the chance he needed. He saw hope where others saw risk. Law was granted control over France's financial system, an opportunity unlike anything before. It was the beginning of a grand experiment. For the first time, a nation would attempt to build wealth on belief instead of gold. And at first, it worked beyond expectations. In 1716, John Law established the Banque Generale, a private bank issuing paper money backed by state assets. For the first time, France began to move away from gold and silver toward a system built on trust. The notes were lighter, easier to use, and quickly gained acceptance among merchants and citizens. Trade began to accelerate as confidence in the system grew. By 1718, the bank became the Banque Royale under royal authority, guaranteeing the value of its notes. This move transformed paper money into a symbol of national power. With royal backing, trust surged across the country, and the economy began to recover rapidly. Law's system appeared to succeed where traditional methods had failed. Encouraged by success, Law expanded his vision beyond banking into corporate power. He created a company that would capture the imagination of an entire nation. This company would control trade with French territories in North America, promising vast wealth. It was called the Mississippi Company. The Mississippi Company was granted monopoly rights over French colonial trade, including Louisiana. Investors were told it held limitless opportunity. Shares in the company were sold to the public, and demand exploded almost instantly. Everyone wanted a piece of what seemed like guaranteed wealth. Prices began to rise rapidly, turning ordinary citizens into wealthy investors overnight. The illusion of easy riches spread through Paris like wildfire. Speculation replaced caution as more people borrowed money to buy shares. The system fed on itself, growing faster with every new investor. Even servants and laborers joined the frenzy, hoping to escape poverty through investment. Wealth seemed within reach for anyone willing to believe. By late 1719, Paris had become the center of a financial revolution unlike anything before. The city pulsed with ambition, risk, and growing obsession. Share prices soared higher each week, creating fortunes at an astonishing pace. The Mississippi Company became the symbol of limitless prosperity. John Law was now the most powerful financial figure in France, controlling both money and markets. His influence extended across every level of society. The regent, Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, fully supported Law's system, trusting its success. Together, they reshaped France's economy. New millionaires emerged daily, fueling even greater excitement and speculation. Wealth became a spectacle displayed across Parisian society. But beneath the surface, the company's promises were far greater than its actual returns. The wealth being created was built more on expectation than reality. Still, few questioned the system as long as prices kept rising. Confidence became the fuel that kept everything moving forward. As demand increased, more paper money was printed to sustain the growth. The system required constant expansion to survive. Law believed expansion would stabilize the system, not realizing it was increasing its fragility. Every new note depended on continued belief. More investors rushed in as profits seemed guaranteed and effortless. The system grew stronger on the surface, but weaker beneath. Prices climbed to extraordinary levels, far beyond the company's actual value. Yet few dared to question the momentum driving their fortunes. Rumors of immense wealth in Louisiana fueled the excitement even further. Stories of gold and endless land spread rapidly through the city. These stories were exaggerated, but they reinforced the belief that fortunes were waiting overseas. The illusion became stronger than reality itself. At the peak of the frenzy, shares rose more than 20 times their original price. Wealth appeared to multiply without limit. Paris transformed into a city obsessed with speculation and rapid success. Conversations everywhere revolved around profits and opportunity. Even the streets near the company offices became centers of intense trading activity. Fortunes were made and lost within hours. The financial system began to resemble a living organism, constantly expanding and feeding on belief. Any slowdown could threaten its survival. John Law continued to expand the system, merging debts and assets into his growing empire. Control over money and trade was now concentrated in his hands. He believed he could manage the system and prevent collapse through careful control. But the scale of the experiment was becoming uncontrollable. To sustain rising prices, more paper money was issued into circulation. This expansion pushed the system further beyond its limits. Some investors began to question whether the wealth was truly real. Quiet doubt started to spread beneath the excitement. A few attempted to convert their paper wealth back into gold and silver. This small shift would trigger a much larger reaction. The bank could not meet all the demands for metal currency. Its reserves were far smaller than the paper circulating outside. As more people noticed this imbalance, confidence began to weaken. The foundation of the system started to crack. The same belief that built the system now threatened to destroy it. Once doubt entered, it spread rapidly through society. Attempts were made to stabilize the situation by limiting conversions to gold. These measures only increased suspicion among the public. Rumors spread that the system was collapsing, causing more people to rush for withdrawals. Panic began to replace optimism. Share prices started to fall as investors tried to sell before it was too late. The rise that seemed unstoppable was reversing rapidly. Confidence vanished almost as quickly as it had appeared. The system could not survive without it. John Law struggled to contain the crisis as pressure mounted from all sides. His control over the system was slipping away. What had once been a symbol of innovation was now on the edge of collapse. The illusion was about to shatter completely. By early 1720, fear had begun to spread faster than profit across Paris. The same crowds that once celebrated now gathered in uncertainty. Investors rushed to sell their shares before prices dropped further. What was once a race to buy had turned into a desperate attempt to escape. The market began to fall sharply, wiping out fortunes within hours. Confidence was no longer holding the system together. People flooded the Banque Royale, demanding gold in exchange for their paper notes. The bank quickly became the center of growing panic. Inside, officials struggled to meet the overwhelming demand for coins. The reserves were dangerously insufficient. Word spread quickly that the bank could not honor all withdrawals. This realization triggered widespread panic across the city. Long lines formed outside financial institutions as people rushed to reclaim their wealth. The system was beginning to break under pressure. Arguments and confrontations became common as desperation grew. Trust between citizens and institutions rapidly deteriorated. Authorities attempted to limit withdrawals in an effort to slow the crisis. Instead, these restrictions deepened public suspicion. The idea that paper could replace gold was now being questioned by everyone. The belief that sustained the system was fading rapidly. As fear spread, more people rushed to withdraw their savings. The crisis fed on itself, growing stronger with every new panic. John Law attempted to calm the public and stabilize the situation, but his influence was no longer enough to restore confidence. Share prices continued to collapse as sellers overwhelmed buyers. The market was now driven entirely by fear. Fortunes that had taken months to build disappeared within days. The promise of endless wealth had turned into devastating loss. The streets filled with anger as people demanded answers for their losses. Public outrage began to replace fear. Violence broke out in some areas as tensions reached their peak. The crisis had now become a social and political emergency. Law's system, once admired across Europe, was now collapsing in full view. Its flaws were impossible to ignore. Confidence had completely disappeared, leaving only fear and uncertainty behind. The financial illusion was unraveling entirely. The government attempted emergency measures to stop the collapse, but these efforts only delayed the inevitable. Paper money was devalued in an attempt to restore balance. This decision shocked citizens and deepened mistrust. The Mississippi Company's shares collapsed alongside the currency. The entire system was now failing simultaneously. John Law lost control of the financial empire he had built. Power slipped from his hands as chaos spread. The regent, Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, faced growing pressure from all sides. The crisis threatened the stability of France itself. Public anger turned toward Law, blaming him for the disaster. His reputation collapsed along with the system. By late 1720, the financial system built by John Law had completely collapsed beyond recovery. The illusion that once powered France had vanished entirely. Citizens across France were left facing devastating losses and shattered trust. The promise of prosperity had turned into widespread ruin. Anger toward John Law grew rapidly as people searched for someone to blame. His name became associated with deception and failure. Once the most powerful man in France's financial system, Law now faced total disgrace. His influence had disappeared as quickly as it had risen. Fearing for his safety, John Law fled France under pressure from the government. His escape marked the end of his control over the system. He would spend the rest of his life moving between countries, never regaining his former power. The man who reshaped France became a wandering exile. Meanwhile, France struggled to recover from the economic devastation left behind. Trust in financial systems had been deeply damaged. The government abandoned many of Law's ideas, returning to more traditional financial practices. The experiment with paper money ended in failure. But despite the collapse, Law's vision left a lasting impact on the world. His ideas would influence future financial systems for centuries. Modern banking systems would eventually adopt forms of paper currency and credit. The concept he introduced was not wrong, only dangerously ahead of its time. The Mississippi Bubble became one of history's earliest examples of a financial bubble. It revealed how belief and speculation could shape entire economies. It also showed how quickly confidence could disappear once doubt takes hold. The same force that builds wealth can destroy it just as fast. John Law died in 1729, far from the power he once held. His life ended in quiet obscurity after a dramatic rise and fall. Yet his story continues to echo through financial history. The lessons of his experiment remain relevant even today. Markets still rise on optimism and fall on fear. Just as they did in 1720, human behavior remains at the center of every financial system. The balance between trust and reality continues to define economic stability. When that balance breaks, history often repeats itself. John Law's story is not just about failure, but about the power of belief itself. It is a reminder of how fragile systems can become. Centuries later, the world still runs on the same idea that shaped his vision. Money is only as real as the belief behind it.